It's Sunday, and it's beautiful out. I have all the windows open right now. It's also June. We're days away from summer officially being off to a full swing, which means pools. And I haven't read much about COVID lately, other than there is a variant going around, but it's not making big waves because no reporting. We might actually see the end of the Gaza conflict by the end of the year. And what else is new? OpenAI. I've been reading about OpenAI stealing Scarlett Johansson's voice for their voice engine.
I still have yet to have somebody show me where AI is like profitable.
Yeah.
And I'm still open to it. I just have literally never seen one instance where it's like,
well, I mean,
actually
are hammers profitable? Is a screwdriver?
I'm not sure.
Is just a microphone profitable? I mean, only at the most boutique end, obviously, but like,
I mean, is it even profitable at the boutique end?
No, actually, it's not. That's like a labor of love because the craftsman wants to make like, the most bespoke whatever they want to make. I think you're right. I don't think it is profitable. I think the output of the tools is what is useful, or what could be profitable if the output is used for some kind of actual purpose. But just as an open platform for, hey, send your questions here, it's like, I think the prevailing question that I keep seeing is, how is this different from searching on Google, other than half of the answer is really believable until you read the last half and you realize that this thing is full of shit.
Yeah, it just feels like
it's like drunk all the time.
Well, it's like people who didn't ever learn Boolean searches using natural language searches and then getting natural language responses, but the responses are so confident in their answers, in their appearance, but also so often hallucinatory that it's like, I don't know if anybody, except for the early adopters who were always going to be like uncritical about it, I don't think anybody but them are into AI right now. So I don't, I
mean,
try.
There's some really cool stuff that happens within music and in the arts, but it's not like, I'm not
even.
Is
there though? With AI?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of plugins now that utilize AI so that people can do like more complex analysis than they would normally be allowed to be able to, because most people aren't willing to open up the SDK and install, Python and Visual Studio and develop their own plugins to do what they want to do.
Most of the stuff that I've seen that is even like remotely cool that has AI is at a layer where like they have to make it appear that it's more AI than it's not, and or than it actually is. So like for example, like if you hear like a Tupac AI rap or something.
Oh, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like an isotope plugin that helps you
No,
get
no,
a
no. But
better level.
I am talking about specifically something like that. So when you hear something like a Tupac AI rap, somebody had to actually rap, and then they just imposed like transposed that voice into
Oh,
Tupac's
sure.
voice.
Sure, sure.
So it's not like a Tupac rap is going to be completely generated from like the ground up with zero. Like if you just say Tupac rap, the AI output is going to be so garbage that it's not even going to be remotely close to
Yeah.
like what is in people's minds. So that's why it takes like somebody laying down a bass track,
Sure,
somebody actually
sure.
putting in the words,
Oh yeah,
somebody
no, there
making the words
absolutely there
believable.
has to be a human involved because AI has no intent and it's not actually creative. I'm
Well,
just gonna
and at
get that
that
out right
point,
now. It's not. It can do things, but it has to be prompted.
and at that point, the people who are trained to work without it are just better at getting to the goal, whereas the AI prompts can like dance around the goal, but they can't really cross a finish line when it comes to a creative idea. It's like
Oh.
I've definitely seen it happen, but it's the exception, not the rule. And I think that's where like I don't know if we discussed it on the podcast, but I've seen like the um like the graphic artists and animators that lost out on a season's worth of jobs have seen the AI prompt people come in and get these jobs, and they're already starting to lose them because they can't take criticism and they can't get to like the final goal. And the problem becomes like because they're a lot of them don't know how to do Photoshop or Premiere or animate or anything like that. Um, they'll get really close to an idea, and when they come back and iterate, it starts to drift further away instead of getting closer.
Oh man.
So there's all these things about like the prompt culture that's already dying out when it comes to creativity, because when you're talking about iteration, you're supposed to get closer to the idea when you iterate, not farther away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, no, just going through like one prompt, like a dozen times isn't even enough. That's enough to get an idea of where this thing's gonna land, but to get it on target, AI isn't like the kind of thing that it's the unpredictable nature of it that makes it. I mean, to me, that's compelling. That's like, who? What kind of? What's this thing gonna give me this time? It's like a random number generator that's slightly more engaging.
Well, and then you'll run into blocks. Like I tried to make a short video clip,
Oh
and
man.
it wouldn't allow me to use the word blood when I was trying to describe a blood moon. So then I had to figure out how to describe a blood moon without calling it a blood moon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like
I haven't even ventured into video generation because everything that I've seen so far is too melty for me. Like I think melty is fine when we're talking about like an image, a static image, but so much of the stuff is just it's like you seen that Panavision stuff, like when they take a theme and pretend that it was made in with Panavision and 50s eyes the aesthetic.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Some of that stuff is really cool. Like The Simpsons, I thought that was cool. But then there was a bunch of other ones that were just like, what is this? And then there were things like Terminator in the 50s. Uh, mm, Maybe it's just me being it's too solidified as what Terminator, where that continuum exists. But why not? If they went back into the 50s, nothing could stop them. That story would have been completely different. But at the same time, that stuff is so melty and It's so weird. And I think it's because it can't hold on to the idea long enough while iterating through itself.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of it.
I mean, I've run batch counts like well into double digits, like 50 or 60, just of one seed with one variation seed. Running them at like 50%, so I'm getting half of the variation seeds trail, I guess, as it works itself through noise. But it's like it's almost impossible to get the thing to give you the same thing twice.
hmm Well, and on that note, I tried a few different video generators, and some of them are just taking um stock footage and like trying to match it up with your fucking prompt. Where I'm like, this is the lowest level AI video I've ever seen, and I realized this is how a lot of those hip hop videos on YouTube are getting created because they're using like some it's like they'll take a prompt and then write a script, and the script sounds like a bunch of content to somebody who doesn't know when they're listening to filler words. It's like all filler words where you're like, okay, if I was going to describe your day, it would be like, in the beginning of the first 24-hour period, this man takes it upon himself to rise and approach the day in a grandiose but content manner. And as he rises and approaches the day, it's like, no, he's getting up out of bed. It's like they'll take some basic shit and then like expand it into like 5 sentences that are a bunch of low frequency words that are multisyllabic to the point where you're like, oh, a dumb person probably thinks this is like intelligent, like sounds intelligent. But anybody who knows 60% of the words that are being said will be like, is there a point to this? Because it just like goes in circles to the point where I'm like, oh, it's almost like, when in writing exercises, when everybody eventually starts writing about writer's block, and everybody for whatever reason goes through this single exercise with like, oh, it's genius, I'll write about writer's block because I don't know what else to write about, and everybody does their own
Wait,
version
that's
of writer's
actually a
block.
thing? I thought it was just like a joke on the internet.
No, of course it's a thing. Like, did you not do writing, like creative writing?
It never occurred to me to write about writer's block.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Come on.
No, I don't.
This is like,
maybe it came out as something
like,
else, but I don't think I actually wrote about
yeah,
writer's block.
you just probably didn't call it writer's block. You probably called it something else and probably made a bunch of metaphors about it, but you don't call the story or poem or whatever it is writer's block, because it's never that obvious when the product of it is never just literally called writer's block or anything like that. So that's why I mean,
Okay.
like you didn't call it writer's block, but you definitely you had an exercise where you task created with creative writing, couldn't come up with something, and then made a metaphor or something about that feeling. And that's what I mean. Like, yeah, there's no way you didn't do it, because there's no way that everybody who writes always has ideas.
I mean, like, I definitely wrote about being stuck in a computer lab like for endless weeks, like dealing with the same like printing issues. Okay.
That's how it manifests.
Okay.
That's how it manifests.
But that wasn't.
But the issue when I say it like that, the issue is everybody thinks it's so genius and novel when they come to whatever your environment, like whatever your environment is, and your experience is how that is going to be translated into allegory and metaphor. So it's like, again, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm stuck and I don't know what to write in the English, because then that's too literal. So it doesn't fulfill the assignment. So that's why you don't do that in that manner.
No, it's because I
So
hated writing the shift report at the end of the night for what I did, which is essentially loading a paper tray and then checking a roller and ensuring that the toner still had toner in it. And occasionally I would have to reset somebody's network connection because the residential IT stuff was really, the infrastructure was really solid. It was really hard to fall off the network. And so I just got really creative with how I explained putting loading paper into a tray or checking the toners, and I turned it into a science fiction universe.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. Like
Okay,
that's the result of that exercise. And so when I say that, literally everybody's gone through that
yeah, but that was like a boredom
in
thing.
American. No, it's not even like it's like it's the natural result of a specific exercise and only having so many experiences from which to draw to do the exercise. So inevitably, after doing the exercise so many times as a child, people run out of things, or like a like even into college, it's like I know we did that in high school, and so that's where I'm like, it's
I don't
usually
remember
around
doing it
that
in high
time.
school.
But I'm sure you did it. Which
Yeah, no,
again,
I
it's
don't
like
remember a lot of high
it's
school.
like a standard part of American high school experience to do like creative writing, but also do grammar and do like history.
No, no,
There's like
you're probably. I just
certain
probably don't
things.
remember it. Like my creative writing class got split into the poetry group and then the fiction group, and there were only four of us, and so we were left to our own devices a lot and had to just produce, writing every once a week when the whole class was in the same room.
Well, I the only
And
reason I
I got
remember
a good
mine.
grade in that class. I know I did the assignments. I just don't remember anything from that class.
Well, I was gonna say the only reason I remember mine is because it got chosen to be read aloud at like it was like the remembrance for Flanders Fields, or there's like a war memorial or some shit, and I'm like internally conflicted because I'm like, I know this is about nothing, but everybody else is like reading some deep shit into it, which is where I'm like, it was frustrating because then that's how I realized a lot of creative output is, but that's not to say that it validates it, but it's frustrating that when you know something is one way and then everybody thinks it's another way, then it's like, oh, people just live in their own worlds. And that's why that specific exercise stuck out to me. But once I realized that like everybody wrote about writer's block and it was like a trope, then I was like, oh, I wasn't that unique to do that. Even though when I did it, it had a good output. It's like, oh no, that's just what literally everybody does when they're like forced to write creatively more than one time regularly. It's like inevitably you just run out of things to write about because you're a kid and you don't have enough experiences to be like L. Ron fucking Hubbard and like be the most prolific fucking creative writer ever. Like just again, kids, even like I said, even into like early 20s, you don't have enough experiences to like keep there's not a well deep enough to keep going back to. And that's where I'm like, that's not it's not you, it's not me. It's just the fact that there's a system in which we grew up in that tries to like weed out the uber creative people by like pushing everybody to try to be creative when it may not be what they're interested in or what their specialties are, but they still push us to it anyway, which is
I'm
like,
pretty convinced that the way public education is designed, it it tries to bring everyone down to a functioning level where they can all work together. But that's not exactly ideal for somebody who needs to be inside their own head to be creative.
well, I think the simplest way to frame it is like public, especially specifically public education, is designed to make good citizens, not smart people. It doesn't care if you're smart. It cares if you're a good citizen. And when I say good citizen, I don't mean ethically good. I mean someone that can like work at a fucking grocery store and isn't going to think too much about how much they're getting paid and if they're getting underpaid, and they're not going to think too much about how much their taxes are, so they're going to go out and fucking consume. So when I say a good citizen in this context, that's what I mean public education is trying to make. And it's like, even in spite of that, people come out of public education, it's not bad, it's not a poor quality education. It's the focus is so directed on one thing that when it's compared to private institutions that effectively allow the kids to like decide what they want to be as individuals, and then have that culture ingrained in like an entire every single class in a private school is usually full of individuals that believe, not that they're told they can do anything, they all believe they can do anything, which is not the same for somebody in a public school, in that public school people leave knowing that their life choices are limited, and some of them achieve beyond what they're expected to achieve in spite of being told that you should temper your expectations in life. And I think that's where like the environments definitely don't have the same level of nurturing for um intellectual agility and freedom, but that doesn't mean the private school always results in the more intellectually agile adult. And in many cases it can become a crippling factor because a lot of them are like made to feel like they're special, because in their minds they're like comparing themselves to public school kids, especially like if somebody's not at the top of their class in a private school, the first thing they're going to do is start comparing themselves to the public school kids and be like, oh, but I'm still better than these kids. So they can be like in the 60th and 50th percentile in the private school, but that kid's still going to think that they're the shit because they're not in public school. Meanwhile, these public school kids are like actually getting as good of an education, and sometimes they can get as good or better of an education than a private institution. Is not always going to be possible, but many times it is. But because they're not thinking they're special, they end up working harder. Not to say that people need to be held from or have things not given to them to make them work harder, but I've seen the coddling, and I've seen what happens to kids who go to private school and are told they're fucking special their entire lives when they're not actually doing anything that's really deserving of like that kind of acclaim. When they're like, if I'm like a teenage kid and I'm going to school and my grades aren't in yet, and I'm like not in sports, or I'm not playing an instrument, or I'm not in like the band, or like in theater or something, like, not to say that that kid shouldn't be made to feel like good about themselves, but to be told that they're going above and beyond when they're not, actually I think damages someone's capacity to be a functioning adult that knows when to put extra effort into doing something. And I think that's where like you look at a lot of the private school kids when they become adults and they fucking like flame out, in that it's not, they never even really accomplish anything, but because the world doesn't then make them, put them on a pedestal and call them special, because they're no longer like, there's no longer any way to separate out themselves aside from being the child of a rich parent, then that isn't good enough to be special. That's like actually could potentially be a negative thing. If you're like, only accomplishment in life as an adult is being born to a rich parent, then society's not gonna call you special anymore. They used to like not make fun of that person, and that person could still exert power and authority as if they had earned their family's fortune. But that shit don't really fly anymore. So I think there's this um, discontinuity between private school and rich people who go to private school and the actual results of that, because part of it is like, yeah, they used to walk into these fucking nepotism positions and they're like daddy's firms or whatever, but like those places are shutting down now because the economy can't support fucking nepotism. Ironically, the shit that's happening to the American economy is what happens in like empires when they start leaning on nepotism instead of meritocracy. Like you can see it in fucking almost every empire that once they start putting family members or like nobles in places where they fucking don't deserve the positions and aren't qualified to do it, that's when big empires start falling. And that's what's happening in the American business field, is as far as like you had all these family businesses that thrived on nostalgia, regularity, which they were able to produce in the past. But when global pressure in the form of like cheaper goods that, yeah, they may break much faster and they may not always be exactly the same between, like, say if you buy 100 of one item, because they're cheaply produced, at least 5 of them are going to be disfigured or malformed. It's cheap enough that people don't care. When that started impacting family businesses, and then you had the people in the families who were made to think that like wearing a suit and fucking crunching numbers and moving imaginary money around to like make more imaginary money was somehow better for everyone than them actually learning family, like whatever their family trade was. Like a bunch of people were made to think that wearing a suit and fucking going to Wall Street and like just yelling numbers and like moving numbers was better than like learning how to fucking make bagels or like learning how to build a functioning toilet, like, or learning how to tailor clothes. Those things were made to seem as if they're inferior to some fucking asshole just like working in QuickBooks, punching in a fucking bunch of numbers on Excel that isn't real money, that isn't real product, it isn't real capital, but because they're good at like moving shit around on paper, then these people became the magicians of the American economy, and it hold the prestige and a bunch of the people into that shit that should have just stayed with like their trade. Because at the end of the day, corporations coming in and then taking the fruits of everyone's efforts from like all the way down to the people doing the trade to the people in the fucking rooms punching, like crunching the numbers, all that money, it became like a, a pyramid to the top where in siphoning people's productivity, siphoning creativity, siphoning attention, all of that being in the modern mind, commerce and capitalism are the exact same thing. That's not an accident. And I think in the context of crony capitalism, in the context of um, hyperinflation, in the context of globalism, the idea that commerce should only benefit the man at the top of the pyramid when we're not a pharaonic society, like when we're not supposed to be a monarchy, we have these little monarchies in the form of corporations that they even get to be to the point where they're definitely cults. And you got people fucking sleeping at the office. Oh, you need to be here all the time. If I'm here all the time, you need to be here all the time. And that becomes normalized. And you got these fucking cult leaders making it seem like their corporation doing this to regular, like, to this, these are human beings, not robots. They're trying to build robots, but the robots aren't good enough. So when they're doing this to human beings and normalizing it and making it seem like this level of exploitation is synonymous with commerce, then people can't even fathom fair trade to the point that, like, I remember when fair trade coffee was more, I don't want to say a fad, but the people in the mainstream were using the term more often because it was like more prevalent. Well, I guess people didn't really care that much about fair trade coffee because you don't really see an emphasis on fair trade coffee that much anymore. It still exists, obviously. It's when people don't get raised to care about fairness, presenting fairness to them, even though it wasn't even really fair, it's gonna fall flat. So you have these people who like are chasing being at the top of the pyramid and will avoid fairness and like move away from fairness with the hope of becoming the person at the top of the pyramid. The entire time they're never gonna be that person, which is that's why it's so fucking, it's like crazy to me to see all these, like, if they really interacted with rich people and like knew how rich people thought about poor white people, it would be a different, obviously it'd be a different world, but like they wouldn't be able to go along with this facade if they really knew how rich white people thought about them. Because at the end of the day, the poorest white people still think that whatever, like the lottery or like selling a bunch of meth or whatever it is, can like get them rich enough to where they can get into a gated community and call other white people white trash. That's what they want to do because they're sold this fantasy of like, one day you won't be that white trash that we're making fun of you for being. And like, inevitably, no, they all stay the white trash that the rich people call them. But if they knew how much rich people despise white trash, like rich white people hate white trash more than they hate black people, like straight up. And it sounds crazy, but it's like demonstrably true because I think it's like, you know, in terms of white trash people who've been let in the club versus black people, it's not even close. There's not nearly as many white trash people as there are black people in the Hollywood club. Like whether it's the Hollywood club or the fucking tech bro club or any of these clubs, white trash don't get in, bro. So like if white trash knew that they were not allowed in these places, like it's funny because I did you
Man, it's I was just thinking about it. It's like would the groundskeeper at a country club not require a degree in managing that really crazy expensive Tahitian grass?
Oh yeah, no, no, there's no fucking no, there's not white trash.
That's what I
no.
mean. Like even like
No,
at the country club, there's like somebody has like
club,
they've got like a dude has a freaking like PhD in botany.
Nah, bro. Yeah, that's the person who heads it, and then all of the people serving them are Mexican. They don't have poor white people serving them. They have rich white people caddying. They have rich white people with the summer jobs that they don't need them where they fuck off. And then you got a bunch of Mexican people doing all of the work that like they're cleaning up around being underpaid to the point where it's still worth it. Because the white people definitely aren't paying them what they deserve, but because they can like make up for it in other ways, like it's not even really stealing when you're getting shit that you're owed. So like
Oh, I read
they're
about
not.
a woman in San Francisco who she's a cleaning lady who makes more like a little bit over six figures and only does it like 4 days a week. There, she cleans some gigantic houses and makes a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like she runs a crew, obviously, but like there's some regions where like people are willing to pay unbelievable amounts of money to keep their just to have somebody else clean their house because they live in an absurdly large house, like a house big enough for probably an entire fraternity or sorority, and it's just them and like their wife and their kid and their brother-in-law or something like that.
Well, of course, and that's where again it's like you, the people serving them aren't white, and that's
Yeah,
why it's
yeah,
like the I've been in all these places. I've been in the places that white trash can't go, which is why I'm saying this. That's what this is exactly like. I don't know if you've heard of the Riviera Club in Indianapolis. It's like a
is
country
that a place
club.
where you could get? It was like also on a body of water, and they had like a restaurant on the water.
Yes.
Yes, I think.
So they didn't allow black people up until like early 90s, I want to say late 80s, early 90s. So like I was one of the first wave of black people that was like legitimately allowed in that place, and it was so hostile where I'm like I would go there with my white friends who like went to private, I went to private school with them, but it was like when I would go in there, it was clearly not a place where they wanted me to be, but because my white friends were like, "Oh no, we're bringing him in here," it would be like, it would be hostile. Like I would be in the changing room, fucking slurs start flying from people who aren't my friends, and then my friends have to come like defend me and shit. So it's like that's how hostile it was then. White trash still wasn't getting in there even then. So it's like it's funny to see that level of like anti-black racism still existing to the point where they like are just desegregating and like allowing black people in, but still keeping poor white people out and like hating on them the entire time. In which again, that's where it's like if if I hadn't seen the disdain for poor white people that like rich white people have, I wouldn't believe it. I would think it's like made up. I would think that, oh no, you like I would think that racism is really that simple where like a white person could go into a country club no matter how like rich or poor they were and like especially over a black person where again it's like I think in modern it didn't start in the 2020s but in like the early 90s it would be uncouth to be seen as a country club that didn't allow black people in because by then everybody knew that Oprah had money and by then everybody knew that there was at least a few black people who had money so like you couldn't assume that a black person didn't have money just because they were black anymore and I mean that was always a terrible
Wait, didn't that
assumption.
happen to Oprah in like Switzerland?
Of
Like
course.
recently?
Yes, yes. Yes, still happens. Still
God
happens.
damn,
Like
to Oprah too.
fucking nah, bro. This happened. J. Cole was like shopping for a Tesla. I don't know why the fuck he was trying to buy a Tesla, but the people trying to the fucking reps were like trying to shoo him out of the place where I'm like, this is this is still happening to black people.
Wait, this happened like 5 days ago?
Yeah, this was like 5, maybe 2 weeks at most. This just happened.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So that's where I'm like, to me, like honestly, as it ain't even about me being black. Like if I walk in a place and like they're not busy and they're ignoring me and I have other options, I leave immediately. I'm not trying to give somebody money that's not trying to serve me or like actively trying to ignore me. So I don't get when these J. Cole's or like Shaquille O'Neal's go in these places and get baited into spending money at places that don't want your money as a black person. But it's like, it still happens to black people, but it's funnier to me that it happens to poor white people worse. Like a poor, a person who pulls up there, like, you could get away with it because you're not obviously white. Like, a poor white person could not pull up to a Tesla dealership with your truck and get service the way they're supposed to. Like, you could do it because racism benefits, like, there's certain characteristics where, like, a white person's not going to be able to tell what type of Asian a person is. So, like, in white people's minds, Asians are like one thing, and they're intellectually superior to everybody. So there's this, like, while it may seem to be like, oh, this is like a positive stereotype, we all know the negative stereotype that goes with that. So it's like, you don't want to, like, play those games with white people's stereotypes, which is why when Asian people go along with, like, white stereotypes, I'm like, that's the fucking jaguar is going to bite you in the face eventually. And it's one of those things where it's like, you see this happening with trans activists, or not, I want to call them activists, trans people who, like,
who end up in the spotlight because the spotlight's always looking for somebody to put the light on.
And then they start catering to the right wingers, or like Candace Owens. It's like, eventually the jaguar is going to bite your face. So you can play that game as long as you want. And it's like, we're trying to warn you, don't fucking play with these people. They're gonna turn on you. And it's like,
I mean, even the house cat eventually will turn and bite your face if you get too close to it.
Yeah, it's only a matter, bro. It's only a matter of time before all those illiterate ass right wingers fucking learn about Robert Galbraith and start calling J.K. Rowling a trans man. It's only a matter of time. Like, do you know who Robert Galbraith is?
I know.
You should Google that real quick, because it's funny. If you don't know, they definitely don't know. Those illiterate motherfuckers definitely don't know who Robert Galbraith is. And you're going to fucking laugh when you find out who Robert Galbraith is, as to why they're going to call fucking J.K. Rowling. They're going to call her a trans man. That's just
wait. Why is J.K. calling herself Bobby G? What's going on?
Because she thought it was cute. She thought that shit was cute whenever, and she probably thought, she played into the misogyny and thought, oh, if I take a man's name, I'll sell better. Well, that shit is gonna come back to bite her in the ass. It's definitely gonna come back to bite her in the ass, because she's made her entire personality hating on trans people. And the people that she's gotten into bed with are not gonna, they definitely don't know who Robert Galbraith is. They've never heard
Calling, a strike novel.
They have never heard of Robert Galbraith. I guarantee you.
But it's
only a matter of time before somebody comes out with some framing about Robert Galbraith being her original identity, and her being a man originally, and then her becoming a trans woman because she wanted to push this agenda to children, and she's actually It's only a matter of, I can
the running great man with titles like these.
oh yeah, bro.
And the Black Heart.
In the witchcraft, it's only a matter of time before these people start calling her demonic. They start calling her a trans, like a man. They're gonna call her a man because her features are like not like immune from that accusation when you start playing those games. And nobody's are for that matter. So it's like, anybody can be accused of being the opposite sex with any sort of, like, framing of, like, oh, you have long hair, you used to be a woman. Oh, you used to wear UFOs, women used to wear UFOs. It's like, anybody who's not rational or like a logical person can have some, like, weird line of attack used to make them think this weird thing, because they don't think rationally. So, like, Robert Galbraith That shit is inevitable, bro. The only reason it hasn't happened yet is because those fuckers can't read. So they've never heard of Robert Galbraith because they can't read. And it's literally only a matter of time before that shit plays out. Because the same shit happened to
Wait,
Ann
what does she
Coulter.
know about like about spies and crime novels and
Nothing.
career of
The
evil?
same the same shit she knows about black culture as to why her
An
black
unput
person's
downable
name's
tale of malice
Kingsley
and
Shacklebolt.
Kingsley Shacklebolt.
I don't even want to say the Chinese person's name on air. I feel like we might get flagged if I say what she named the Chinese person in her
Oh,
book.
oh no, that's so bad.
Yeah, bro. I don't even want to say that shit. You thought I was playing. You thought I was exaggerating.
No,
Nah, nah,
oh
bro.
god.
Nah. It's fucking the signs were there. The signs anybody because I never like read her I never read the Harry Potter books because that was like slightly out of my age range by the time like I was like reading shit like novels. So I was reading fucking Stephen King books when I was like 12, 13, 11 for that matter. I don't know, Michael Crichton books. Um so I was never really like in the age group to read her stuff. But when I started finding out about the names in the books, that's when I'm like, whoa, okay, this woman's sus to say the least. And then when you find out the anti-Semitic shit is like that's undeniable. So she definitely hates Jewish people. Like without a doubt, she hates Jewish people. Like no question. It's questionable whether she hates Chinese people and black people. But then when you find out how much she hates trans people, like, oh no, she definitely hates Chinese people and black people too. And like there's a bunch of people who use her as like a dog whistle. So that's why that Harry Potter video game sold so well because you had a bunch of racist people who didn't really read
No,
the
you
books,
know
who
that.
didn't really watch the movies, but like, I'm gonna buy this game because she fucking hates trans and black people.
I mean, have a character with two surnames is like just as appealing to the person that finds Ricky Bobby because he's got two first names appealing. That's the same demographic. That's like a very like perfect coverage Venn diagram. It's a circle.
Oh, I forgot how bad it was because then one of fucking Cho is like a Korean surname, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, fucking Cho is a goddamn Korean surname. So like, yeah, no, this is like the most racist shit. It's not even like good racism.
Got two last
So
names. Fuck. Wait,
she's never beaten the allegations, man.
I wonder how many fictional characters have two last names. Probably a lot.
I mean, Kingsley Shacklebolt,
Yeah.
and I don't know if like Shacklebolt's a real last name. I've never heard any black person named Shacklebolt. I've never heard anybody named Shacklebolt for that matter. But Kingsley's not a first name.
No.
Ben Kingsley, come on, man. I like, yeah. No, she's terrible at naming, but also racist. Those are like two different problems that like coincide on these terrible ass names.
So Metafilter was asked to list names that are widely recognizable as only fictional characters, and like almost half the list is characters from Harry Potter universe. Like they're all just wildly made up.
Yeah, and again, she became a dog whistle, or I guess Yeah, it's weird because then Dan Radcliffe came out and was like, "Nah, I don't rock with this lady." Like, she was a great contributor to the story lore, but I don't I'm not down with like the stuff she's saying. So it's like you have people who've basically made Harry Potter into a dog whistle for anti-trans and low-key like white nationalist pro white nationalist rhetoric. And so
Wow.
that's why that game
How
that's why that
far
game
has it
did so well.
fallen? So I
Uh
I I had always my one of my biggest issues with that whole franchise is I was too old for it, and I was not down with the fantasy of going off to a boarding school. I don't care if there's magic. Like, uh, being sent to a boarding school is a punishment. It's a really weird fantasy to me. It seems like a very strange, like, what, huh?
it's a rich white kid fantasy.
Yeah. So, like, to me, that's like not the ideal scenario. It was visually very, very entertaining, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go read these books.
Well, here's the problem though. Like you're saying, boarding school became a punishment, but before I want to say like 94, people used to go to boarding school and like the rich kids ran those places. It was like the way gangsters that are like the the heads of their gangs run prisons. That's how like rich kids were basically running boarding schools. And like something happened where it like got turned on its head overnight. I don't know if there was like an investigation or if like somebody it was a nationwide phenomenon that just changed instantly. So that's where I'm like, I know, because fucking Culver, like, I don't know if you know anybody that went to Culver,
Oh yeah,
but
I had a
um,
buddy whose younger brother was on their hockey team and soccer team.
yeah, they 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 went sports heavy, but they went they got super strict. So that's like the closest example. But they used to be really wild. So it's like I think to the point where, like I said, I'd have to do some research into it, but I bet some parties probably happened that shouldn't have happened. Something happened that probably shouldn't have happened, and then that culture like just completely got stamped out overnight to the point where I think that's why the boarding school fantasy kind of became convoluted, and it became more of a punishment. But it was like only because that happened like within our lifetime, and so I think that's
Well,
where, especially in Britain too.
a quick Google search for USA boarding school scandal yields how many results? Um,
There you go.
Pages and pages and pages of either allegations or histories of boarding school sexual abuse scandals involving teachers abusing children.
Yeah.
And but it appears that a lot of these things get covered up. The student gets sent away, and the
Right.
teacher is not
Well,
heard of because it's not part of a. It's a private school.
right. Well, because the teachers were, I mean, not just the teachers, but the parents were like buying alcohol. So, like at the school I went to, the parents would buy the kegs and they would have the parties, but they would be like, if you're coming and drinking, you got to give us your keys. So at least they would like take the keys away. But knowing how open the parents were about alcohol and all the other shit that was happening at these parties, it's like this is stuff I've seen with my own eyes. So I know it's happening elsewhere. I know for a fact it's happening in Indiana. It's happening in fucking Indianapolis of all places. So like it's definitely happening in like Los Angeles. It's definitely happening in Boston or fucking Chicago or fucking any place that was bigger than Indianapolis. That shit was definitely happening there too. So that's where I'm like, no, because then My thing was I wasn't like a rich kid. Like our family is definitely like middle class. We weren't the rich kid family. So I would hear the stories about what was going on at the rich people's houses. And so I this like popped into my mind um like within the last 2 weeks. And it like I had to research it just to be like, did this really happen? Um so long story short, the Indianapolis Pacers used to practice at our school, and they weren't like the cheerleading squad used to practice there too. So it wasn't just like only one time where we would interact with these people. They were like always at our campus. One of the kid, like not one, three of the kids that went to our school, their parents owned the fucking Colts. So like the Colts were always at our school. And so there was rumors about like swinger parties with the parents at the school where they would like they called them ski trips, which obviously back then, like in my naive head, I was thinking they were like going to like Colorado, but this was obviously just cocaine binges. And this would be like um they the person and the people who would tell me about these things would like allude to the cocaine, but in my head, I'm like, oh, this is taking place on like a ski slope somewhere. But these are like, no, these are like straight up fucking sex parties that they're having where there's like a bunch of drugs or whatever. And supposedly Reggie Miller and his wife were swingers, and she didn't like it and she got mad at him and she burned his house down. And so back, no, bro, here's the thing. Back then, they didn't know it was fucking arson. And then it got proven to be arson like years later. And so I didn't even think about this shit until like something popped into my head where I'm like, let me look this up to see like how much of that what I thought was rumor can be confirmed. And sure enough, they confirmed that the house was burnt down. It was definitely arson. And the mainstream story said they suspected that his wife had something to do with it. And it was never like confirmed in the public. But I know what happened, which again, that's where I'm like, knowing, because then, bro, this same circle of people, one of these people, I remember it must have been 1998 or 9, told me that she had been down in Miami and had seen Britney Spears doing a bunch of cocaine, and fucking Justin like upset that she was doing it because Justin wasn't into all that shit, and basically saying that like they're not a real couple, but Britney Spears was like this huge cokehead. And none of this shit, bro, none of this shit had come out yet, to the point where I was like, I don't distrust this person. And I'm like, I had no reason to like not trust that person. So I marked that in the back of my head then. And I'm like, this sounds crazy, but I have no reason not to believe this person. Obviously, all that stuff came out, and then obviously she got put in fucking the conservatorship and all this. So she definitely had some drug problems, but like to the point, she was hanging out in like drug houses right after she became an adult. But these drug house experiences were not making it to the mainstream, to the point that like what rich people were doing behind closed doors used to stay behind closed doors. And I want to say I went back and rewatched Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
And I want to say that is really what made people start to think this shit was happening, because now Eyes Wide Shut is like tame. But when that shit first came out, it was not only like groundbreaking accusations about what's going on with the elites. Fucking Kubrick died like 4 days after it premiered. So like the um the craziest shit about his death is like when you're looking into his death to try to like disprove that it was some sort of conspiracy, it only gets worse to make it seem like it was some conspiracy where like he was clearly exposing the Hollywood elites and then they fucking killed him for it. And so like watching Eyes Wide Shut, now I don't necessarily suggest anybody go watch it because it's like in everything now being so hypersexualized, like if you've never seen it before, the shock value of it is not going to be there. We've already learned about Epstein, so that shock value is not going to be there. There's like nothing the movie can reveal now aside from just being this weird observation of like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman looking like they weren't a real couple that had probably never actually like touched each other off camera. Like it's really funny to see actually. Like that's one of the funniest parts is like when they make out, it's like so forced and unnatural. And I'm like, these people were supposed to be nah, these people were clearly like faking a marriage for whatever reason, and they definitely did not like each other. This was like a marriage of convenience.
They're
So
not
seeing those
married.
things, right? Like no, like they may be married, but they don't like each other physically.
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
she doesn't like him, he doesn't like her. That's what their romantic scenes. That's all they give. Like it's funny in that I don't think
yeah. Cameron Diaz and Tom Cruise were a more believable couple in that Vanilla Sky movie.
right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. But that's where I'm like, I don't think that Stanley Kubrick is that good of a director to have been able to get that subtle body language where Nicole Kidman just is like grossed out every time she touched Tom Cruise. Like that's some like shit that seemed like it was just there. And that's what I'm like, if she's that good of an actress, fucking awesome. But I don't think she's that good. I don't know. I've never really seen her in other shit, but I don't think she's that. I know Tom Cruise isn't that good of an actor because I've seen him in other shit. He's like he thinks he's that good of an actor. So like when he's playing Jack Reacher, you can tell in his head he thinks he's like 6'4", but his body language gives like insecure old man. It's like he's not that good to make you believe that he's like gonna scare somebody. So that's where I'm like, I know he thinks he's that good, but he's not. And that's where I felt like with Nicole Kidman, I don't think she was necessarily trying to give that, but the reason I say that is because like her the scenes with the dream scenes with the military guy aren't very good. Like she doesn't seem like she's into him in those. Even though I think she's supposed to be seeming into him, but she seems like she's into the dude where they're dancing, where I'm like, okay, this is believable. But like your scenes with Tom Cruise, it took me out of like the fact that I was watching a movie because I'm like, this lady looks uncomfortable. Like it looks like she's not getting paid enough to be touching this man, let alone them supposed to be married at the time.
Well, I think the problem is that Tom Cruise is best when he's doing live action anime, and
that's fair.
Reacher's not even live action anime. That's just brutal noir, and but Top Gun, that's just anime. Mission Impossible, that's like the most Americanized anime that there could possibly be.
To be fair, Eyes Wide Shut could be anime. It's just like hentai, right? I mean, it's like over dramatic. There's like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
masks and shit. Like it could definitely be like if that shit was dubbed in Japanese and like hyper style, like it wouldn't even have to be hyper stylized from what it is. It's like it could definitely be anime. So I'm
I
like,
mean, like Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion are like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
100%
yeah.
anime, and those are pretty good actually. And I actually enjoy the Mission Impossible series as far as like, they do the roller coaster of action really well, and they've got a few good fight scenes occasionally. He's good as an anime character. That's where I'm gonna leave it. 'Cause, like I didn't like him in Last Samurai, and I think Collateral was just like, that's actually a good movie too. He's super serious, but I feel like that movie's more about Jamie Foxx than it is actually about Tom Cruise.
Well, and all that to say, Eyes Wide Shut, it made no sense when it first came out. Like, I don't know if you saw it when it first came out.
I
I
tried to
saw it
watch
when
it,
it
but it
first
didn't make
came
any
out.
damn sense. I'm not gonna
Exactly.
lie.
It made no sense. It made no sense when it first came out. And I'm glad you saw it and got that feeling because I think now with like hindsight, it's just tame to the point where I'm like, obviously it makes sense. And obviously we know what it's saying. But when it first came out, none of that shit had been said. None of that shit had been presented, even though it's like it's actually an adaptation of a story about that same I guess in the 1800s there was like a French book written about that subject that's like taking place, and then I think they made a film in the 40s or something. So this is like Eyes Wide Shut is an adaptation, but obviously elites were doing fucked up orgies and fucked up shit. Because here's the part that stuck out to me that I realized because of what's happening with Diddy now. Like what didn't really make sense in the first viewing, and I guess when the idea is like you really are supposed to watch Eyes Wide Shut at least twice to understand it. Like you can't understand it the first time you watch it because too much shit is happening. So one of the things that's happening is like we don't actually know what's real and what's dream because we know people have been drugged, and so we don't know when people enter dreams, and we don't know when people discuss dreams if they're actually discussing reality because we've been informed that there is drugging taking place, and we don't know if people are ingesting the drugs willingly or are being given these drugs, and it's never made clear. So knowing that and then finding out like in the context of the story, like it didn't make sense to me the first time. Like at the end of the film, when like Tom Cruise gets discovered at the party, it's very not clear. It's very unclear what's happening. And they're like, take off your clothes. And like, then this girl comes in and saves him, basically saying, like, she'll give himself instead. And so we don't know what that means. There's all these implications as to what that means. And one of the implications is like, because now we've seen his face, they might videotape him, or everybody knows he was there, and that could then be used to blackmail him. Or there's the implication that it could be used, or that his life was in danger and he was going to be killed, or like his body was going to be violated. And so when we're presented with this sequence, it's not clear what happens. And so when we find out that the woman who gave herself up for him dies, we have to go through the process of as the audience figuring out like how deep does this conspiracy go, and then spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen this fucking almost 30-year-old movie now. At the end, we're told that it was all fake, which is some like Midsummer Night's Dream Puck level shit. Is not being told to the audience. It's being told to Tom Cruise's character saying, "Oh yeah, all that shit where we were like did the asked you for the password and all this shit, that was fake. We we all were in on that, and it was just a show to scare you. Nobody killed the girl. She overdosed on her own." And so then we're faced with this dilemma as the audience. What happened? Because we don't know for sure. And so the fact that we don't know for sure is this disturbing place with which we're left. And the characters in the story then decide that it's better that they're still alive and can be grateful to be alive than to worry about what actually happened. And so that ending is like very, it feels like a cop out, but there's so much shit that got dropped on the audience in that 3 hour film, or almost 3 hour film, in the form of ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas, but also information that they hadn't really been presented with before, in terms of like the things that could be happening all around you, where you're living in this one world and this entirely different world is actually taking place around you. And so when people were presented with that, I think it definitely shattered a bunch of people's bubbles and their realities. But I also think it just like got repressed and buried in the zeitgeist, in that I feel like that film is kind of forgotten as to what it did at the time and what it represented in terms of an actual attempt to shine the light on the elites that were doing this fucked up shit. And so now that we're like post Epstein and post Cosby and post Diddy, that movie makes way more sense. And it's not, it, like I said, it's not even like, it's almost not even abstract now. And what really got me was like knowing the way that Diddy was like having these parties and recording people without their consent, and then coming back and being like, "Hey, you know that orgy we just had? We've got tapes of it. So if you don't want anybody finding out about that, you're either going to give me some money or this tape's going to get leaked and your fucking career's done." And so knowing that Diddy did that, and then that was the rumor about Hefner, that was the rumor about the fucking Playboy Mansion. And that's why whenever Hef died, the FBI went in there and fucking cleaned the fuck out of that place. And none of the footage from the alcove,
The grotto.
the grotto, yeah, none of that shit ever got public. We all know there was some shit that went down there. Where the fuck is the footage? It's in a vault somewhere, because these motherfuckers have been doing that shit in terms of this is Operation Midnight Climax at scale. At scale, bro.
You'd have
Because
to
we
like
know,
you'd have to reconstitute Hef's hands so that you could pry that jump drive out from it.
and here's the thing. You know what's better than a government agency running an Operation Midnight Climax type thing? Letting a fucking private citizen do it and just observing them and letting them amass the data, letting them fucking carry the cost for all the hardware, carry the cost for all the cameras. They're fucking doing all the work for you and just sitting there watching them. Anytime you want to fucking rein them in, just pull that leash in, bring them in, be like, hey, Diddy, what the fuck? What are you doing, man? I thought we were just gonna have this, little relationship where you do your thing. We don't come into your place. You fucking beat the shit out of your women. We keep our heads turned. But no, Diddy had to go and fucking, I don't know what he did to upset the apple cart, but
I,
that deal is no longer on the table.
He saw a vacancy on Epstein's Tan Penis Island, and he decided that he wanted his own Tan Penis Island. Obviously.
I mean, and I'm sure that's part of it, but he pissed somebody off. He pissed somebody off, and now he can no longer move the way he was moving for like the last 30 fucking years in
Yeah.
our faces. This motherfucker was vote or die. Vote or die. Meanwhile, he's like abusing people, trafficking people, fucking exploiting all of his artists, telling us to vote or die. Man.
Man, all of a sudden that threat like carries whole new meaning.
Right.
It's like, guys, we got to vote, otherwise P. Diddy's going to come to our houses and beat our asses, like, personally.
I mean, nah, that's what's so fucked up. This is why he's dangerous. He doesn't get his hands dirty. He finds somebody who's willing to do that shit for money, and he pays them. That's why people don't respect him. People fear him, but they don't respect him. And I think that's the difference in, like, he wants the respect that he can never get. And, like, you can get people in the streets to fear you by blowing up their cars, by fucking threatening them, by like, because then I don't know if you've heard some of the threats, like the threats he makes are like, he knows he's a bitch. He knows he wouldn't do anything himself, and he threatens people that way, which is why they're legitimate threats. Like, he told I don't know if you remember that show, The Making of the Band.
I vaguely remember that show.
Yeah, he was an Epstein co-production, is basically trying to show a group of kids how to make it as a band, basically gaslighting and abusing them the entire time. And yeah, they got some like songs out of it, but they could have got those songs without the gaslighting and the abuse. So they didn't really need to like be gaslit and abused the way they did just for the outcome. But he would have been able to legitimately argue that before all this shit came out. And so now we're finding out he was like one of the dudes. He threatened to buy up all the houses on his block, turn off the lights, and then pay people in his neighborhood to fucking take out his family anytime they stepped out the house. So this is like, I think I'm giving the PG-13 version of that threat, where it's like, no, not only am I not exaggerating, I'm like toning it down is in terms of like the things he told this guy he was going to do to him and his family, and how he told him how he was going to do it. And when he said it, apparently the reason the Freddie P guy reiterates this story is because you have to take this shit seriously when somebody who can, like, if you live in Section 8 housing, yeah, Puff Daddy can fucking come and buy up your whole block and cut off the lights and pay somebody enough money to do that shit, because he's not going to do it himself, but he is petty enough and sociopathic enough and vindictive enough. That's the part that's really crazy, is he is that vindictive to actually do that, because then we find out he fucking blew up Kid Cudi's car. Kid Cudi wasn't in it, but that shit definitely happened. So all of these things that we're finding out now about Diddy alone, in tandem with like Eyes Wide Shut being released when it did, that's why I had to go back and rewatch it, because I'm like, I know there's a bunch of stuff in my mind about this film as to what not just me, but what people think about it. And what's crazy is there's not even that much sex in it. It's like, for modern times, it doesn't actually show a lot of skin for a long time. And I guess there's like an uncensored, like, longer cut of the orgy or whatever that they show in the European version, but it's not even like that much longer. So it's like, I want to say there's maybe 15 minutes of nudity in the film.
This is the first time
maybe.
Tom Cruise saw Nicole Kidman naked.
I don't even know if he saw her naked.
Oh,
I don't know, man. I don't. Oh, yeah. I think okay. Yeah, I think he did.
I
It definitely like they definitely had one of the shorter scenes in the film, and it was also one of the more painful to watch in terms of like the absolute lack of chemistry between two people who are very clearly pretending to be into each other.
what was that other? They made another movie with each other.
Clearly not memorable.
What was it? Far and Away, yeah. He was supposed to be some like Irish dude that was gonna get a plot of land somewhere. I don't remember anything else other than Nope. I'm pretty sure that was one of those movies that was like on like Stars or Encore or something, and I would catch the first part of it and recognize and say like, oh, I don't want to watch this. And then I would come back like at the very end of it because I wanted to see what was on next. There are actually a lot of movies that I don't remember anything about though. Like I'm pretty sure I've seen Days of Thunder, but I don't remember anything about it.
I think that one was it wasn't a bad film, but that one was more about the camera shot, like
Oh, it was a
the
cinematography movie.
yeah, that was the star of that film.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
But do you remember Born on the Fourth of July?
That's a really good movie, but that's an Oliver Stone movie.
That's Tom Cruise best acting ever.
But that's Oliver Stone directing.
Right, but that's like
Oliver Stone could get a good performance out of a piece of mud. Like,
but that's his best performance in my opinion ever. Which you know is I don't even think it's about the subject matter so much as like I've. It's not even just about the transformation too, so much as like, nah, he was that dude. He like for somebody who's a Scientologist who never went to fucking war, he was that guy. He definitely was that guy. Which I don't think he like as far as I guess I haven't done too much research. I don't think he's like one of those douchebag method actors that never breaks character like Shia LaBeouf. Um who's terrible apparently. Shia LaBeouf is a terrible human being. Just
I stopped.
we don't even need to
attention
go
him.
into it. He's a terrible human being. Like that's all that needs to be said about him. Like
I firmly believe that his inclusion in the iRobot movie completely derailed everything about that terrible edition
I
of the
forgot he
story
was even
universe.
in that.
Yeah. The irony of it all is that that entire story doesn't exist in the book iRobot. It's like an amalgam of various portions of different stories that exist inside that book and also in Bicentennial Man. Like a significant portion of it, I'm pretty sure, is taken from Bicentennial Man.
Mm-hmm.
And but they create this extra narrative about the police officer and this extra narrative with like they kill off like the most important dude in the whole story universe, like well before Brain even exists, and then they create this malicious AI, like way in advance, and the AI that evolves in the book iRobot, like wants to help humanity, isn't seeking to destroy humanity. They get it all backwards. They fucked it up so bad. Visually, it's a fantastic story, and I love the way that they um, envision the robots. But man, way to get the story wrong, Will Smith, directing team. Way to just way to ruin it. And also, nobody wants a fucking Audi that rides on trackballs. Like nobody. Nobody wants a car that can just start spinning in 360 degrees while it's traveling down the motorway at speed. I got really off topic. We're talking about Tom Cruise here, not Will Smith.
Well, on that note, it's funny, like, there's like an actual war happening right now, and people are still talking about the slap.
What?
Like uh, the narrative about whether people are ready for Will Smith to come back after the slap for the fucking Bad Boys movie, which they clearly are because it's doing well. Um, but I feel like that's the
Wait,
two
what's
Americas.
the next Bad Boys movie called?
It just came out.
Ride or
Bad Boys 4.
Die. Oh, I haven't even seen any in commercials for this at all.
Really?
Yeah, I've somehow missed this. I have not been paying attention. Apparently, there's a Bad Boys 4 movie.
Yeah, just came out this weekend.
Man, how long? I wonder how long they're going to be able to run that franchise.
Well, it sounds like they're trying to build in offspring, so it's like they might be able to run like two or three more movies.
I kind of want to see old Martin Lawrence and old Will Smith though being like detectives somehow. I think that come back here, you punk.
I mean, shit. They both got. I know. Obviously, we know Will Smith has kids, but Martin Lawrence has to have kids by now too, right? That are like adults. Cause shit,
two,
Damon Wayans' son was like an actor now. So yeah.
Jasmine Lawrence is 28. Ayanna Faith is 23, and Amara Trinity is 21. So yeah, all of his kids are like in the prime age to start doing, being characters in the Bad Boys franchise. Oh God. I don't know. I think Bad Boys is Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and any kind of deviation from that, and it's pretty much over. And if somebody wants to create a story in that universe, they need to start at the introduction, or they need to introduce these characters, and then they can spin off. But it's got to be their own movie. It can't be like Bad Boys Second Generation. That's just like,
Well, I mean, I think that's what they're doing in this movie. They're
oh
introducing
God.
the son, like at least uh Mike Larry's son. Mike Larry's son is like the bad guy.
Oh, that's funny. He's got to go like he's got to like punish his kid. Is that what's is this how the story works? He's got to.
Estranged. He doesn't. I don't think he knows that it's his kid at first. So.
Oh God! So it's like a pissed off kid and dad
Yep.
story. Oh man. Okay, I'm not watching it now. That's not Bad Boys. That's like bad.
I mean, that's exactly what would happen to Mike Larry. He was
Yeah,
like banging fucking the informants. He was
man.
literally banging the informants.
Yeah,
Like all of them too.
yeah. It was about to happen.
Yeah, so that's what I'm like. Nah, this is like the most believable storyline from,
Okay, maybe I am gonna
from
watch
what
it
I can
then.
tell. Also, I guess that guy who threatened to leave the Israeli war cabinet fucking left. Benny Gantz.
Oh, he dipped.
Yeah.
Huh.
He threatened to dip by today if I think it was like 3 weeks ago where he made that statement. And we're like, let's see what happens. And the motherfucker followed through.
Well, good.
Because I remember we posted about it must have been like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Um, and we were like, oh, this may be the turning point. Because if there's like internal dissent to that level where people are like leaving the cabinets now, there's not will. And so that type of public display is that's why it's fucking front page news right now.
Yeah, he said
So
that Netanyahu's preventing their victory over Hamas. That like
yeah,
Netanyahu's holding up the show. That they could actually be moving forward, and it's Netanyahu because Bibi doesn't know when to stop.
yeah. So that's interesting. We'll see what this week brings.
Meanwhile, like the United Nations is like, stop, please. And even our government's like finally like, hey guys, you gotta tone it down a little bit.
Oh well, because Netanyahu's supposed to be speaking here this week,
Yeah.
so we'll see if this is like a big setup and they actually take him to prison.
Oh man.
That would be amazing. I know it's not gonna happen.
He
That
gets
shit
off
would be
one
funny as
plane
fuck.
and then they like put him on a different plane and send him back to send him to Europe. They're like, sorry, dude, you're being diverted.
Like, actually, you're going. This plane is actually on the way to the Hague. We're sorry. Thought the sign was wrong. That was on you.
LL is we just put these stickers on one of our planes. This is not an LL flight. These passengers are not passengers. They are Interpol. Oh, that'd be a fucked up sting operation.
Right? What do Interpol stings look like?
We don't know because they work or they never happen.
Right? Yeah.
That's I think that's like the only thing that seems like it's heading in the right direction. I think the biggest news that I've heard out of like the war in the north is that uh, last year the Ukrainians managed to destroy or hit an airfield with a bunch of drone like kamikaze drones, and they confirmed damage to one of the 10 in existence fifth generation Russian fighters. So now there's only like 9 that can fly in theory. In theory. They're supposed to have like 22 by the end of this year, but they think that they
Oh
might.
no way!
But
No way!
but they think that they're now at this point they'll be lucky if they have 16 by the end of 2028.
That sounds more accurate.
Yeah. And so, like, it's believable because they delivered one. There's one Su-57 that is known to fly. Only one, and it's not actually a stealth capable platform. It doesn't have the right materials, and its engines make an incredible howling noise that's audible from like, you know, 20 miles away or something dumb. But yeah, apparently they're inflating planes and tanks and building, missile or rocket trucks out of wood and putting netting over them. So you know, from satellite and from they think that it's a people will think that it's an actual tank or whatever, and they're putting tires on top of airplanes because like
What?
yeah, apparently that's enough to trigger the detonator on the kamikaze drone and not render the airframe completely unusable because it's detonating 6 inches away from the airframe. Another analysis that I was reading suggests that even if they're buying stuff at high prices from China, um, they don't actually have enough resources to keep their mobile infantry functional. They're gonna have to start cannibalizing their machines and their air industry. Even if they started like right now, just today, and like started like commandeering aircraft from the few remaining airlines that will fly into Russia, and it went on for a couple of weeks, they wouldn't have enough parts to maintain the existing air fleet. Like what I've read is that they are trying to minimize the use of the automated braking systems on the wheels on the landing gear of of passenger jets, and using nothing but engine braking, like the thrust reverse shroud mechanism. Russia's in a very interesting place. And then it gets weirder because no matter what outcome happens, they're gonna have to rebuild themselves. And where's this money gonna come from? And the question, of course, is who in the European Union is gonna flip the bill to rebuild Russia?
Damn.
Somebody's got to rebuild Ukraine, and how's Russia going to be able to afford doing that while rebuilding itself and maintaining a military presence in Ukraine so that Ukrainians don't rise up and kick them back out?
Mm.
Like it's this really weird, like this is some really weird stuff. Like there is no actual end game for this because they don't have enough motion or fluidity within their economy to become a full-time arms manufacturing state. They lack the man hour resources to do all of these things at the same time. And they have a growing population. Like there are more people dying or leaving the country than are being born every year.
Well, this seems to be the impetus for their,
Yeah.
I don't want to call it colonialism, but expansion into Africa.
I mean, no matter what they do, they don't have enough resources. And their population is always shedding the most intelligent people. The smart people get away. They leave as quickly as they can.
Somebody pointed out to me that like they were using African mercenaries, and I'm like, that's like the sign of every last dying empire when they have to fucking use fucking mercenaries, even though they actually have a military.
And it's not like that Wagner group, which was basically an unsanctioned non-state aggressor that was simultaneously funded by a state entity. They've got the most convoluted ways of explaining shit.
No, but I mean, when you're a country that's supposed to have its own military, when you have to hire mercenaries, you're down bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, they're sending in like F-16s into Ukraine now too. Like there's a bunch of I guess Baltic states that are sending their F-16s to Ukraine because they were about to go out of service anyways. And it occurs to me that it's like this is how the United States sends in its stealth fighters, because while Russia is busy dealing with a bunch of F-16s that it can see but can't catch, the F-22s and F-35s get to go in and, you know, maybe they see a flock of seagulls. Maybe. And then by then it's too late because then they've already launched their whatever Phoenix missiles or whatever they use now. AMRAAMs and HARMs and unending list of names of ordnance that blow shit up.
They did a flyover for a race recently, and it was like, when people say by the time you hear them, they're gone, that's like not an exaggeration at all.
Yeah.
But it's so fucking loud where you're like, you wouldn't think something so loud would be able to move so fast that you don't have time to react enough to see it. And that's where I'm like, I have a video. Sorry, go ahead.
I like to imagine that the sound a jet engine makes when the afterburner kicks on is the same sound that a dragon makes when it roasts something. It's like a deafening roar that just like...
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure it's fucking louder because Jesus Christ, it's like thunder. I mean, yeah. it's in terms of the intensity, because
there's some jets nowadays that can fly straight up, and the only reason they can't fly out of the atmosphere is there's no air up there to feed their engines. Like an F
They
an F-15, if it could carry its own oxygen, it would probably fly out of the into low orbit.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like
I mean, yeah, like it's got the right size
yeah,
where yeah.
it's got like insane thrust to weight ratio, and the airframe is strong as can be. Like, and that's like a 40-plus-year-old airplane that does that. I mean, modern planes probably. Yeah, we just need to be able to pack our own oxygen on the airplanes, and we can send them in to have space planes. No, they'll never come back, but
I think what was it? The Aurora is supposed to be able to
yeah,
low Earth orbit, but again, it's like they did one of those stoppies or whatever. I don't know if it's like the same thing in a plane as like a motorcycle, but they did one of those over the downtown area, and the whole place, like I couldn't hear myself think because it was fucking shaking our building, and like
yeah.
it just sounded like I was in the middle of a thunder strike or like a thunderclap, and it was it's it's the loudest thing I've ever experienced in my life of any concert. I've been to P Funk concert too.
Yeah, I have been to a P Funk concert.
It was louder than a P Funk concert.
Yeah, every time I've been anywhere close to jets flying or doing anything, anytime I've been anywhere near an aircraft that breaks the sound barrier, it always just like it kind of blows me away because I know that mud ass motorcycle. I know that like I understand like principles of lift on the most basic like fundamental levels, but a lot of these things are just like missiles that somebody's strapped onto and they're controlling it with like what amount to like with wires, and it's just insanity, like the amount of power that's being generated that can propel something ahead of the sound it makes.
Well, and it sounds like a barrier is being broken.
Yeah,
Like that's almost the only way you can describe it, is if there's like some invisible glass pane that you didn't know was there, that it just broke when it went by.
I mean that's exactly what it's doing, but like traveling so fast that sound itself becomes a barrier of friction because the air in front of it is just getting shocked so hard. It should sound like thunder. It should sound like incredibly loud because in a split second a vacuum is forming where that's like exceeds 200 decibels at the leading edge of that surface, and then it dissipates away the further you are away from it, inverse square, blah blah blah. And so by the time we hear that on the ground, it's not that bad. But for the person that's if there was a person within a few, probably like 50 feet of that thing, if a pilot decided to break the sound barrier right next to an aircraft, it would probably kill the person in the other aircraft. They have to be moving at the same speed. The shockwave is like incredible. And it is so loud, even on the ground. I think that America's industrial war machine, tried to make a propeller aircraft that could fly beyond the speed of sound, but it was too loud because the blades were breaking the speed of sound too. And so the pilot had to withstand getting like punished by that over and over again. But I don't think it did it.
Well, and it's like on that note, when they're making these machines, they're not taking like there's the integrity of the vehicle and that gets taken into account, but sometimes they'll use like toxic or radioactive materials in the build to the point where then the people who pilot them end up with these like life altering diseases, or the result of being in these things is like life altering somehow.
You know,
Um,
that's the price you got to pay if you want to, uh,
right? Yeah,
be a part of history. You gotta get cancer. You
yeah.
gotta expose your body to radiation, and to even get there, you gotta expose yourself to all manner of weird ass chemicals. That's the way it works nowadays.
Right.
I feel like every scientist that we learned about in high school was somebody that like touched the wrong chemical and lived long enough to tell people don't do that. And then what if it,
Oh well, like, did you know? Like the women. Okay, when they first made Indiglo watches, the women who were like painting the watches would like have glowing fingers for like days afterwards. Or their shit would glow at night.
oh, that's so messed up. That's so
Because
messed
they
up.
didn't fucking know. This is yeah.
Well, they were painting with radium infused paint. What did they think
Yeah,
was
they
going to
didn't. They
happen?
didn't know. I mean, they didn't fucking know. They had no idea. Which is like I don't know why I learned of that, but it must have been some random article where I read it and was like, that's fucking insane, and it just never left my mind. But um, it's shit like that where I'm like, is on the one hand they're advancing technology, but then on the other hand they're like irradiating people.
Well, I think they like wow, apparently they stopped using indigo and radium paint in 1968. Huh.
Yeah, it's really old technology.
Yeah. Huh. Radium girls, the dark times of luminous watches.
Yeah, that must have been the article.
Yeah.
What does it say that when that was published?
But it was published in 2017.
That sounds about right.
That's awesome. Oh, wow.
Right, it sounds completely made up. It sounds like it's some shit I just made up to be like, oh, they used to be fucking
I knew,
really dangerous. Like,
I mean,
no.
I knew that they contained radium at one point, but I was under the impression that like all of the like the modern Timexes that have Indiglo, that was just like
Nope.
a battery related like charging up some like luminous
Mm-mm.
metallic thing. Nope.
Little kids running around with irradiated watches.
Holy crap! It looks like you could buy radium from the local pharmacy back in those days. You just buy radium. Here, take a lick the bottom of this spoon at
You
night,
could
and it'll take
probably
care of
buy
you.
like strychnine too.
Wait, are those the days people want to go back to, where you could just buy like radioactive
Yes.
materials at will, all willy nilly like that?
When the cough syrup had opium in it.
When you could buy coke at the in your and get cocaine in your syrups, you can make your own elixirs and tonics. Radium jaw? What the?
Oh yeah, their teeth would fall out and shit too.
Yeah, this is pretty bad. It is hard to calculate how many women suffered health problems due to ingestion of radium.
And get this, the reason it was women is because they had small hands. You need small hands to paint the fucking tiny little dial.
No, you don't. You need a magnifying glass and.
Of course, you're being logical.
Oh,
Of course, you're being logical.
oh,
We're not talking about logical people, so they only hired women.
oh.
That's why it's called the irradiated women, not or the radium women or whatever, not the radium people.
Yeah.
Because these fucking idiots.
God damn it! Why? Oh. Well, that just makes me feel like Timex dropped the ball really hard.
Well, but they did it for the military,
Yeah.
so it was like this
Yeah, let's give some glowing
that.
watches to the military so they don't get spotted at night.
Well, now that was full circle. What I mean, where I'm like, it sounds like a joke. Where I'm like, no, you might be flying the fucking most advanced fucking piece of machinery on the face of the planet and dying in the process because you're getting irradiated
By the
because it's
dials.
yeah, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of Soviet era radioactive glass that gets circulated, like uranium glass and plutonium glass, stuff that glows in the dark. And every so often, I'll see some video about some what are they called when they people who go they'll buy like a storage unit and they'll pull stuff out. The There's a name for that show. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, I saw one where this guy pulls out this thing and he's like, "Oh, this was one of those radioactive glass." And he starts talking about it. Next thing I know, I'm down this rabbit hole, looking at this stuff, and it's like it turns out that some of these things were like used in laboratories uh, while they were studying like properties of radiation, and some of this stuff isn't safe to handle. Like some of it is like holding onto one of them for like a period of time is the same as being in an airplane for that same amount of time, like a similar amount of radiation exposure. Just being around,
Yeah, there's
just being around a jar, like, what?
no, there's like a. Have you seen? There's like a video of a guy who opens up one of those canisters and the fucking camera starts like
Going crazy.
buzzing out. Yeah, and the picture starts degrading, and he's like, "I think I found something, guys."
Oh man.
Oh, idiot.
Uh, that maybe there is hope for the future that like that kind of content creation will just go away because enough people will die from some weird condition as a result of exposure to opening up some irradiated object that they shouldn't have been opening. Trusting their Amazon Geiger counter with their life with their seriously, an Amazon Geiger counter sounds like a bad idea, but I'm sure it exists. Now I want to know.
Well, on that note, I feel like we are past the peak of self-destructive
Oh yeah, $67,
like
$54,
mm,
$39.
Jesus.
Yeah, get your Amazon Geiger counter, guys. We can go figure out if we're gonna die or not.
Well, those that like prank meme video era, it feels like it's past. I want to say it was like 2015 to 2018 when it peaked. And I don't think it was necessarily even COVID. I feel like it was dying off before COVID, but COVID definitely killed people's capacities to do like public pranks at scale. And
Yeah.
then once COVID started to recede, I think people weren't as receptive to that type of shit anymore. So I don't really see it. I'm sure it still exists, but um for a while you couldn't get away from it though. That was like everything is fucking prank videos. And just fucking and just mean too a lot of times. Um I want to say the meanest one and the worst one I can remember is Ari Shafir. He picked up a bunch of people outside of like Home Depot saying he was going to give them work and then dropped them off at a fucking immigration office. Um like it was fucked up, but that's I want to say that was like peak worst.
I mean, every so
Um
often, like my Amazon feed shows me someone dressed up as a clown getting beat up. They're doing some weird clown prank, but no one deserves to get beat up for just wearing a
I've never seen a
stupid.
clown prank.
Yeah, there's this whole scary killer clown
Oh,
prank
oh,
thing
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I have no, I have seen that one. That
where
one, that okay,
yeah, where people
that one.
jump out from behind something and act weird and
Well, for a while they would just stand there. They would like just stand there like Michael Myers and like watch people
yeah.
and film it. And then like
Then they
after a
started
while, I think
following
people started
people.
fighting back. Yeah, yeah, with
Yeah.
like balloons and shit.
Yeah, like here there's one I saw the other day. This dude's just like wearing his clown mask and he's got a wrench in his hand and he gets waylaid by some property owner who's just not having it. And I think that the internet the peanut gallery that's always like, I wish they'd try that on my property and blah blah blah, or like, the one of those people actually got to have that confrontation, and they did exactly what they said they would do, and they just beat the crap out of somebody. Like I think that that'll happen enough times, and people doing dumb shit's gonna stop because they'll see enough. They'll see enough of the outcomes where some property owners had enough, or somebody who is like just not having it, they had a bad day, then they're not having it at all, is like gonna take it all out on somebody who's pulling a what they think is a meaningless prank or a harmless prank. And it sucks because I don't want to live in a society where people have had enough and they're ready to jump to fisticuffs right out the gate. But maybe that's what ends up happening. Can't regulate behavior on the internet. People still want to act like morons. It's like it's really it's frustrating as can be. And of course, I know better than to go into the comments, but sometimes you can't help it.
Yeah, I saw a comment where it was like, it seems like the world would be a better place if all comment sections were just shut down for a year.
you know
Like
that
you
mean
can have your articles, just no comments.
wait, no comments means no Facebook. Means no
Yeah.
commenting on things. I love it. I think that the world would be a better place. It would encourage people to actually interact with each other in real life instead of just a flurry of fingers. Of course, we
Well, and there's this like impetus to develop an opinion really fast so people can see it. And I don't know when that happened and where it came from. Obviously, social media has contributed to making it worse, but I feel like whenever digital cameras, I think, became more viable because we used to have to pay like 20, $30 for fucking a roll of film that we couldn't be guaranteed was going to turn out. And once that stopped being an impediment, I think people started taking way too many pictures and getting way too candid with like cameras. And I think that
well,
that's really where it changed
I
in my
think
mind.
the giving everyone a camera resulted in more snapshots and more disposable content.
Mm-hmm.
Like no,
Yep.
I don't care what anyone thinks. No one really cares about what you eat. Not you, just in general. Nobody cares what
No,
somebody else
no,
ate.
no.
And like we only want to hear
Can't
about
taste the
it.
picture.
Yeah, we only want to hear about it from our friends when they're describing the thing that they ate because that's cool. But looking at a picture is like, okay, I mean that's great. It is cool for the person who made the meal if they're trying to remember what they made. That's one thing. That's a different kind of tracking. It's like, tracking my meals over time. That's kind of cool. If you turn that into like a time lapse or a slideshow, get enough pictures that you can animate it so the things start like morphing in and out of each other. That's what AI is for. The morphing, melting of food into a different food. There we go. But it's the same thing. Like I don't know when it started, but the stylized smiling like with a jaw wide open, like they're screaming or like they're about to take a bite out of something. That looks really weird.
Yeah.
it's just like one step away from sticking a tongue out.
Well, there's faces that guys make who are afraid to smile and show emotion. So like you'll see them like bite their lip, or like you said, they'll be like the open mouth smile, but it's like they don't want to they don't want to be just what's the word? Betraying their masculinity. And if you're too happy, that means you're not that much of a man, because real men don't show their emotion like that. And that's like I've seen these weird smiles where I'm like, dude, just fucking smile like a regular person. It's
Oh
like
my god. Somebody needs to suggest that they'd be prettier if they smiled.